Welcome to Thrive with Pride from Age Options, an online space for LGBT older adults and those who care for them. This is a recording of a live event held on Zoom, which included a lively Q&A that we did not record. Jamie Farrell of Age Options shares information about how to recognize, report, and combat elder abuse in our communities and in long-term care facilities. There is a lot of information in this presentation, but before you get your pen and paper out, please know that there is an expanded version of Jamie's slides linked in the video description below, along with several more helpful resources. After you watch, please fill out a very short survey to help us improve on our programming. It is anonymous and will take you less than 5 minutes. The link to the survey is also in the video description below. I'd love to introduce Jamie Farrell to you all. Jamie is Age Options Aging and Disability Rights Coordinator. She joined the agency in November of 2019 after 5 years of working directly within the Adult Protective Services Program, or APS. She worked as an APS caseworker and APS program supervisor. Jamie's very passionate about assisting and protecting vulnerable adults. In her current role at Age Options, she's responsible for establishing and maintaining strong relationships with partner agencies, providing technical assistance to funded agencies, advocating for increased supportive interventions for older adults and adults with disabilities, and promoting the provision of quality services. Jamie is a graduate of DePaul University with a bachelor's in sociology and a graduate of Loyola University Chicago with her master's degree in social work. Jamie's here to present to us in preparation of World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, which is June 15th. We'll remind you to wear purple in honor of that day. And I think we all in this day and age also need to be aware of what constitutes abuse and to stay vigilant so we can care for ourselves, but also for our friends and neighbors. So thank you so much, Jamie, for being here.
Thank you so much, Kate. Good morning, everyone. As Kate said, my name is Jamie Farrell, and I'm the Aging and Disability Rights Coordinator at Age Options. So the objective of this presentation is just to help you all become aware and or develop an understanding of the programs that work to protect and advocate for older adults and adults with disabilities. We'll also go over how to go about actually making a report to the Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program and Adult Protective Services. Before I move forward, I'd like to just preface this presentation by saying that although I have a lot of knowledge as it relates to the APS and long-term care ombudsman programs, I don't like to refer to myself as an expert per se, given abuse situations are inherently complex and every situation we as professionals or just community members may encounter is unique. So I'm comfortable saying that I don't have all the answers. And that being said, if you have a question I'm not able to provide you with an immediate answer, I will absolutely get back to you. And I will be collecting any lingering questions from this presentation at the end so we can go over those to make sure you guys get all the information that you need. Okay, so we'll start by discussing what adult abuse is. So abuse is a broad term and encompasses many actions, behaviors, and treatments. It can range from negligence and disregard to intentional mistreatment, violence, and disrespect. And the severity of the abuse can also vary depending on the setting and oftentimes occurs on multiple levels. For the sake of time, I won't go over these definitions of abuse, but it's important to note just the types of abuse that older adults and adults with disabilities may experience, which include physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, confinement, neglect, deprivation, financial exploitation, and self-neglect. And as I just mentioned, more often than not, abuse occurs on multiple levels. For example, emotional abuse and financial exploitation frequently occur together, as do emotional and physical abuse. So in addition, elder abuse extends beyond the intentional battering and assault of an adult. In fact, cases of emotional abuse and financial exploitation are more common than physical abuse, and neglect is considered one of the most prevalent types of elder abuse nationwide. So as I stated at the beginning, the two key programs that protect older adults and adults with disabilities include the Adult Protective Services Program and the Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program, which I'll be going over today. Both programs are supported and administered by the Illinois Department on Aging. And I'm going to start off this presentation by discussing the Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program. So the Ombudsman program was mandated in the early 1970s by the Federal Older Americans Act to protect the rights of nursing home residents by investigating and resolving their complaints. The Illinois Act on the Aging gives Ombudsman authority to advocate on behalf of long-term care facility residents and participants living in the community who receive Medicare, Medicaid managed care, or Medicaid waiver services. And both of the laws I just noted give Ombudsman access to residents in long-term care facilities and to private interactions with residents. So for the sake of this presentation, I will just be referencing the work of ombudsmen who are resident-directed advocates in long-term care facilities. The Home Care Ombudsman program works with participants living in their homes in the community. And if anyone would like more information about the Home Care Ombudsman program, please let me know and I can share more information about that with you directly. So the mission of the Long-Term Care Ombudsman program is to ensure that older persons and adults with disabilities receive quality services and are able to live a dignified life at the highest level possible. Ombudsmen provide advocacy services for residents of long-term care facilities and participants receiving home and community-based services. And the long-term care ombudsmen have really two levels in terms of how they function. They work as a public advocate for all residents and speaking up for the needs of residents in long-term care facilities. And the other role is solving problems for one resident or a few residents in a facility. And both of these functions are dependent on one another. So listed on this slide are the service components of the Long-Term Care Ombudsman program, which include identifying, investigating, and resolving complaints made by or on behalf of residents, providing a regular presence in long-term care facilities through regular presence visits to one or more facilities an ombudsman is assigned to, so that residents and family members can get to know the ombudsman and identify them as somebody who can help them resolve problems that they may be experiencing. They also provide consultations to residents, family members, and facility staff. And consultations are information and assistance provided to individuals which do not involve investigating and working to resolve a specific complaint. They also conduct community education sessions to provide the community with information about various topics such as residents' rights, the Long-Term Care Ombudsman program, how to select a long-term care facility, etc. They also work on issue advocacy through legislation and other means. For example, the state office works to advocate for the modification of laws, regulations, or policies that affect residents in any way. And then lastly on this slide, they support the development of resident and family councils and provide technical assistance to those council members. And ombudsmen typically get complaints when they're conducting a visit within a facility. During the routine visits, they talk with residents and see them face to face. They look around the physical building during the routine visits. They do a lot of listening and check for distinct smells. They look at the operations of the facility, like how staff treat residents and how they greet ombudsmen during the visit. And ombudsmen look at how staff are communicating with residents. For example, are the staff listening to what the resident is saying? Are they taking their time, or are they just rushing the resident through their various tasks? And ombudsmen work to build effective relationships with staff so that ombudsmen can set the foundation for working with facility staff when problems do arise that they need to get involved with. So now that you have an understanding of who the Ombudsman program serves, the mission of the program, and how it's structured, I'm just going to go over some resident rights. So residents' rights are woven through both federal and state long-term care facility regulators, and it's important to note that people do not lose any rights just because they are admitted to a nursing facility. In fact, they actually gain many rights related to their care and their safety. And as an advocate for residents, ombudsmen must understand and have a strong commitment to residents' rights. And when ombudsmen are conducting routine visits, they're introducing themselves, informing residents of their rights. And as you can see on this slide, residents have a multitude of rights, which include, but are not limited to, the right to be treated with dignity and respect, the right to safety and quality care, which can sometimes present as a rights violation if there's a decline in physical or mental health as a result of For example, low staffing or fewer opportunities to engage in preferred forms of socialization or activity. They have the right to participate in planning for their own care, so participating in those care plan meetings. The right to privacy, which can sometimes present as a rights violation when facility staff, they don't knock on the door before entering a resident's room, or when a facility staff fail to close doors or pull privacy curtains when providing care that could compromise the resident's dignity. They also have the right to safety of the resident's personal property, which is most often seen as a rights violation related to lost laundry. Or sometimes cash or small valuables can also come up as, quote unquote, missing. They also have the right to stay in the facility unless, for example, the resident's welfare and needs cannot be met at the facility, or the resident has failed after reasonable and appropriate notice to pay for their stay at the facility. They also have the right to meet with an ombudsman and present any grievances that they may have and receive a prompt response from the facility or the long-term care ombudsman program. And the last right that I'll go over is just the right to remain free from threats or punishment, including retaliation, as a result of asserting their rights to file grievances. I'd like to note that the ombudsman is not able to disclose the identity of the person who has filed the complaint without the permission of that resident, if they're the complainant, or any individual who makes the complaint. This is just important to keep in mind if you're someone, if you or someone is concerned that they could experience some retaliation as a result of filing a complaint that they're in need of assistance with. And again, these are just a few key rights of long-term care residents that I wanted to bring to this group's attention. So regardless of the source of the complaint, the ombudsman intake efforts when they're receiving the complaint should include learning, what has occurred or what is occurring, when did the problem occur, and whether the problem's ongoing, where did the problem occur, who was involved, what were the effects of the incident on the residents, what were the reasons or just the individual reason for the occurrence. What steps has the resident or the complainant already taken to resolve the problem? What, if anything, the facility or other interested parties have done in response to the problem? And last but not least, the resident's wishes about the complaint resolution. So I wanted to make sure this information was included in today's presentation, just so you're all aware of what information you may be asked for if and when you file a complaint with the Ombudsman program. And if ombudsmen, again, are receiving a complaint from anyone other than the resident, the ombudsman will explain to the complainant that they will not be able to report back to them without the permission of the resident. So that's just important to keep in mind if you make this report to the ombudsman program and you're looking for some sort of follow-up for a status update, that if they don't get the resident's permission, that they can't share any information with you, subsequent to the complaint being filed. So in order to file a complaint with the long-term care ombudsman program, this slide's actually specific to filing a complaint in suburban Cook County, with the exception of the city of Evanston. So if you're looking to make a report, again, that's outside of the Evanston area, you would need to call Legal Aid Chicago, and the phone number is listed on this slide. And the City of Evanston Senior Services operates their own long-term care ombudsman program, which is why it's separate from Legal Aid Chicago. So they only handle complaints that are made by individuals when the person lives in a facility in the City of Evanston. And Kate will be sharing these PowerPoint slides with you all. So you'll notice at the bottom of this slide, there's a hyperlink, which will take you to a PDF that has the full program contact list by county, which may be helpful to you all in the future, since you all likely don't necessarily work with people that are in suburban Cook County. It also includes all the staff members from the Office of the State Ombudsman. And just so everybody's aware, the State Ombudsman is Kelly Richards at this time. Okay, so as I previously mentioned, the Adult Protective Services Program is the other key program in Illinois that protects both older adults and adults with disabilities. Per the Illinois Adult Protective Services Act, the purpose of the APS program is to work with and on behalf of older adults age 60 and over and adults with disabilities age 18 to 59 to investigate reports of alleged abuse, neglect, exploitation, and self-neglect, to intervene to prevent further mistreatment and to allow the older person or person with a disability to remain independent to the maximum degree possible. More specifically, the APS program is responsible for investigating claims of abuse, neglect, exploitation, and self-neglect occurring in the home and within a community setting. As some of you may know, APS provider agencies began investigating allegations of self-neglect as of July 1st of 2018. And if you'd like to learn more about the implementation of self-neglect or how that new allegation is being handled by the program, I can absolutely answer any questions you may have about that. It's also important to note that as of January 1st, 2019, the APS program now has jurisdiction over abuse investigation if a person lives in a long-term care facility, but the abuse occurred outside of the facility. For example, if an older adult is taken out of a long-term care facility by a relative and therefore is no longer under facility supervision and the older adult is abused by that relative, a report to APS would be warranted despite that older adult living in a long-term care facility. In addition, APS has jurisdiction to investigate a report if the alleged financial exploitation is perpetrated by a family member, caregiver, or another person who has a continuing relationship with the adult, but who is not an employee of the facility where the adult resides. So I won't go in depth in terms of describing all of the guiding principles of the APS program just for the sake of time, but I have them listed here so you're aware. They include self-determination, advocacy, collaboration, intervention, and health, welfare, and safety. I will touch on the guiding principle of self-determination because it's a major component of the program and a principle that I think everybody would benefit from being made aware of. So the APS program works with adults, and when working with adults, there's a presumption that they have the capacity to make decisions unless we screen and determine otherwise. Therefore, adults have the right to decide how and where to live, whether they want to accept services, and we understand that they have the right to make their own decisions, even those that others wouldn't necessarily make for themselves, and also the right to develop personal relationships. Therefore, it's the responsibility of APS staff to make sure they're accepting of unique lifestyle choices and that they're conscious of the people they're serving having a right to privacy. And this can be challenging when APS is working with other service providers as well as family and friends because it's hard for professionals and sometimes loved ones to see an older adult or an adult with a disability not accept interventions and services that are offered to them that would improve their quality of life or reduce their risk of abuse. But again, APS has to accept the client's right to self-determination and the right to make, poor choices as long as they have the capacity to make that choice and understand the consequences of that decision. So again, the first criteria that has to be met for APS to accept a report is that there must be an alleged victim who is 60 years of age or older or 18 to 59 with a disability. Next, the allegation has to meet the criteria and definition of abuse, neglect, exploitation, or self-neglect. And keep in mind that you don't have to have proof that abuse is or has occurred. You really only have to have suspicion that abuse is occurring. And lastly, on this slide, the alleged abuse must have occurred within the past 12 months. Or if the abuse occurred prior to the previous 12 months, the effects of the abuse must continue to adversely affect the alleged victim. So an example of that is if there's, financial exploitation that occurred, let's say it was 15 months ago, so it's not within that 12-month period, but, there's these adverse effects, that they're not able to pay for their expenses or their care, APS would be able to accept that report and work on addressing those issues. So the next two criteria, I went over this a little bit, but they talk about individuals who live or reside in a long-term care facility, a CILA, certified I'm going to blank on it, individual living arrangement or a group home, so a licensed facility. And the abuse, neglect, or exploitation occurred outside of the facility and not under facility supervision by a family member, caregiver, or another person who has a continuing relationship with the alleged victim. So that means if we have an individual who lives in a nursing facility or a group home and she leaves the facility to go to a relative's home for a weekend visit with family, and during that weekend visit, she becomes sexually assaulted, and then she goes back to the nursing facility or the group home, she tells her counselor she was assaulted, and then because the counselor is a mandated reporter and makes a report to APS, then APS has jurisdiction to investigate the allegations and will do so. The way to look at this is that the abuse happened in the community when that individual was at their relative's home. So it didn't happen at the facility or under facility supervision. And the next one, like I said, we went over this just a little bit, but just to give you an example, the next one talks about the alleged financial exploitation being perpetrated by a family member, caregiver, or another person who has that continuing relationship, but who is not an employee of the facility where the alleged victim resides. So let's just pretend for a moment that my grandmother is in a long-term care facility and I go to visit my grandmother. I speak with her briefly, I visit with her, and then I, go in her purse and take her credit card. I then go in the community and, go buy all these nice things for myself. Grandma never gave me permission to do that. So, it's considered financial exploitation that's happening in the community. So that would meet APS criteria. So an investigation could occur. And then the last piece of criteria listed on the slide states the alleged abuse must have been caused by an identifiable person other than the alleged victim who has continued access to that alleged victim. So it was not a scam where someone from another country is, trying to take advantage of that person. It's someone they know or someone we could actually converse with as long as we have permission from the alleged victim. And again, that, individual must have a relationship with the alleged victim and has continued access to that person. So at this time, APS doesn't investigate any scams or anything, again, that's perpetrated by somebody that's unknown to that alleged victim. So that's just something to keep in mind. And although there are professionals and state employees who are mandated reporters, anyone who suspects that an adult is being mistreated by another should call the designated Adult Protective Services Provider Agency in the area where the adult lives, or they can call the Illinois Department on Aging 24-hour hotline, which is listed on the slide, but it's that, I would definitely recommend calling the hotline if you're not sure of which provider agency serves the area in which the person lives. And if there's immediate concern for another individual's safety, you'll want to call 911 for an emergency response, given APS caseworkers are not considered first responders. However, APS will respond within 24 hours for severe cases of abuse. And if you're trying to locate the appropriate provider agency and the adult lives in suburban Cook County, we do have the Age Options referral page to locate the appropriate agency by inputting the individual's address. And if you are trying to locate the appropriate provider agency and they don't live in suburban Cook, you can use the Illinois Department on Aging's profile webpage. And the only information you need to locate a provider agency outside of suburban Cook is the county and township in which the person resides. And like I said, if you need to make an immediate report, it's a difficult situation and you want to just make sure, quickly that they get the information they need, you can always call the Illinois Department on Aging 24-hour hotline to make that report. So now that you understand the purpose of the APS program, the types of abuse they investigate, who's eligible for services, and how to make a report, I'd like to just go through some information you will need to be prepared to provide the report taker if you do find yourself in the position of needing to make a report to APS. So basically you need the alleged victim's name, address, phone number, their sex, age, and their general physical or mental condition. You'll need the alleged abuser's name, sex, age, relationship to the victim, and their general condition as well. You'll need to be able to explain the circumstances that led to belief that the abuse, neglect, exploitation, or self-neglect is occurring. They also want to know whether the alleged victim is in immediate danger, the best time to contact the alleged victim, if the alleged victim is aware of the report, and any possible dangers to the alleged victim or to the caseworker if they're conducting a visit at the residence. You also need to know whether it's believed that the adult can self-report, names of others with information, if there's collaterals involved, different service providers, if law enforcement's involved. You'll also want to be able to tell them, if you're willing to be contacted again as the reporter. And last but not least, just any other relevant information that could help the caseworker, develop an understanding of what's occurring, build rapport with that alleged victim. And in my experience, provider agencies will accept reports if the reporter doesn't have, some of the information, including even the alleged victim's name or phone number, or the alleged abuser's name or phone number. Sometimes they can kind of, they'll use their investigative skills to determine, that this person's in unit 506, and you check the directory and you're able to identify that person's name. The only thing is that the Illinois Department on Aging and the provider agencies won't be able to accept a report without the alleged victim's known location or their address. For example, if there's somebody you're concerned about and that they go to the library Monday through Friday, from 12 to 2, and they always sit in the same spot, that could be enough to make a report, maybe if they don't have a home address that you're aware of. And it also needs to be known that the alleged victim is 60 years or older, or 18 to 59 with a disability, even if you don't know the adult's exact date of birth. And then you also have to obviously suspect that abuse, neglect, exploitation, or self-neglect are occurring. And it's very helpful for the reporter to just provide general information about the person's condition and just, again, the circumstances that led to that belief that abuse, neglect, exploitation, or self-neglect is occurring. So for your reference, the next 5 slides contain information for the APS provider agencies who serve suburban Cook County, which are broken down by townships. And like I said before, you can utilize the Age Options referral page if you need to locate information for one of these providers, or there's the Illinois Department on Aging provider search webpage. And like I said, the next 5 slides contain the information for the providers in Age Options service area. And then before I answer any questions, I just want to point out this slide, which contains links to some helpful resources. And if you're interested in learning more about the Adult Protective Services program and would like to see a video that actually shows how a caseworker would approach a face-to-face visit within the APS program, I would highly recommend you view at least one of the APS training videos, which is available via the second link on this slide. And again, Kate, I think you're going to share this information with our folks on the call. So, and then there's another page of resources here. And then here's my contact information. If you have any questions after today's presentation and you'd like to connect with me, here's my information. And please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions or if you just need any additional information. And that will conclude my presentation.
Thanks again to Jamie for a great presentation. And thanks to those who were able to join us live on Zoom for our great discussion afterwards. Remember that if you have a question about adult protective services or elder abuse, you're welcome to email Jamie or call Age Options at 1-800-699-9043. Check the video description below to see a PDF of Jamie's slides, plus more information on how to recognize elder abuse, your rights in care facilities, and where to report abuse or neglect. Please join us for our next monthly event on June 22nd, 2021, when we will be playing bingo for prizes. You can call in the day of the event, but you need to register in advance to receive a bingo card so you can win. Go to thrivingwithpride.org and click the button that says bingo to register. Thanks for watching, and please don't forget to fill out the quick survey below.